The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Drivers, start your engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. Nascar, Indycar, Formula One, Formula E, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here's your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
Hail, hail, the gang is all here once again. We appreciate you joining us as well, whether it is on the flagship station or on CRN Live on YouTube. I'm Steve West. Matt Nicholson and producer John Myers joining me momentarily as we get prepared to talk about how many races is too many for Formula E. It's hard to believe we're actually talking about that. Formula One showing their hypocrisy again. Kyle Busch is racing in the Truck Series again this year. We will tell you his entire 5-race schedule. Just before the season begins, an NHRA team is expanding out once again. Yeah, there's a lot of agains this week. You notice that? Got a new game for NASCAR gamers. We got tracks being upgraded and rules being changed in IndyCar. NASCAR looking into a strategy they're not sure that they like. All that, so much more on this week's edition of the Championship Racing Network going next.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network.
Hello, sport.
Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Yeah, let's roll this crazy thing here, shall we? And yeah, it was kind of crazy last weekend. We were talking about this, how they were thinking about and looking at the weather forecast at Daytona, and because of that, they ran not only the Craftsman Truck Series race Friday night last week, but they moved the ARCA race from Saturday back to Friday night. Turned out they were right. So they moved the Xfinity Series race to Monday. And then Sunday comes along, and here comes more rain. So Monday was supposed to be a doubleheader. Well, as it turned out, rain on Saturday and Sunday actually kind of also interfered a little bit with Monday because it was still wet enough at the planned Monday start of the Xfinity Series race, which was supposed to start at, I think, 11 a.m. Eastern time?
Yes.
They decided to delay that, and they flipped it. So the Cup Series race actually raced first. There you go. Joey Logano leading the field to green, and he was up front for a pretty good portion of the day. But as the end of the race neared, of course, as you would expect, things get jumbled up. Hendrick Motorsports drivers were up front as they came to the white flag. As they came into the tri-oval, Ross Chastain, Austin Cindric trying to occupy the same piece of asphalt to get around leader William Byron. Instead, they get together, they spin into the infield, and when Cindric came back up onto the track surface, that triggered a yellow flag. They had to go through, they had to review it and make sure that they knew exactly when the yellow was shown to the field, and it turns out it wasn't actually shown until after the field had crossed the start-finish line, meaning that whoever was leading at the last scoring monitor at the time the yellow was shown and taking the white flag ended up being the winner. Video showed it was William Byron. Byron claims his first ever Daytona 500 career win, and that gets Hendrick Motorsports their 9th all-time Daytona 500 win as a company. That ties them with Richard Petty Motorsports for the most Daytona 500 wins for a team all time. Byron led teammate Alex Bowman to the line at the finish, followed by Christopher Bell third. Corey LaJoie with a nice run. Bubba Wallace in the top 5 as well. Rest of your top 10, A.J. Allmendinger. You and I were asking about this. Why in the world did Kaulig bust him back down to the Xfinity Series? But they did. John Hunter Nemechek in there, Eric Jones in there, Noah Gragson fills out the top 10, Chase Briscoe. So pretty good run for a couple of SHR guys. But again, it's Daytona. Mm-hmm. How much can you look at Daytona and go, hey, this ought to be a pretty good season? Not much.
You can't, and you really won't be able to this week either.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I mean, there have been times, and, I've made no bones about it, but if you're new to this particular show, I've been a Tony Stewart fan since his rookie year of 1999. I seem to remember, I think it was 2002. Remember, he won the championship that year. Wasn't it that year when he got crashed out on like lap 2 or ended up out on lap 1 or 2 of the Daytona 500 and finished dead last?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, the Daytona 500 does not necessarily tell you how good of a year you're going to have.
Nope.
Can it put you in a hole? Sure. Can you win the championship at the Daytona 500? No. Can you lose it? Not really. Tony Stewart can tell you that too. Let's see here. But we do know this. Here's the deal. With stage points and bonus points from the dual races the previous Thursday, the standings are a little bit different. Now, they do obviously show William Byron is locked into the playoffs, and he leads with 51 points. We're not going to give you the points. We're just going to give you the guys that are in the top 16. Following William Byron are Alex Bowman, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Corey LaJoie, Chase Elliott, John Hunter Nemechek, Eric Jones, Noah Gragson, Chase Briscoe, your rookie, Zane Smith, Martin Truex Jr., Ross Chastain, and Austin Cindric. Strangely enough, Denny Hamlin's on the outside looking in. That's just one of the strange things that happens after a race like a Daytona 500. About 30 minutes after the Daytona 500 ended, the Xfinity Series got their race rolling, and as things came to a conclusion, it was old teammates who left things on a bad note last November at Phoenix who ended up battling for the win. Austin Hill, on a 2-year win streak, had to battle Cup Series full-time driver turned Xfinity Series moonlighter John Hunter Nemechek as well. With two to go, a crash behind them, including then third-place running Ryan Sieg, prompted a yellow flag that was shown with Hill out front. He ended up being out there for the win, besting Nemechek, trailed by Justin Allgaier, Parker Retzlaff, Myatt Snyder, Riley Earps, Joe Graff Jr., Ryan Sieg, Cole Custer, and Justin Haley making up the top 10. He and Sheldon Creed, there is no love lost between these two.
No, none.
And it showed throughout the course of this particular race as things continue to go on as well. But as it turned out, Austin Hill, for the 3rd season in a row, locks himself into the playoffs after race number 1. Mm-hmm. It's a great start to the year, admittedly. But again, there's a long way to go.
Yeah, November's a long way away, but with them throwing these cautions like they were throwing them last lap,
jeez,
it was a little questionable.
Yeah,
because some of the moves were made. Some of the concurrences of the crash were eerily similar. You let one race back, you throw the caution for the other, and then luckily the cup race was already taken the white.
Yeah.
So I don't even know why it was even questioned. Well, the yellow flag.
I don't know.
Byron was leading. Bowman was leading. They didn't cross the line. Ross Chastain didn't get hooked until after the line.
I know.
So,
yeah. But you got to go through and look at the video, I guess.
Yeah.
Hill, again, locked into the playoffs. Again, third season in a row. Sheldon Creed second in your standings. Riley Earps, Parker Retzlaff up there. Justin Allgaier, Jordan Anderson. Chandler Smith, AJ Allmendinger, Cole Custer, Brandon Jones, and pole sitter Jesse Love with Ryan Ellis filling out the top 12. SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen sitting just on the outside looking in 13th.
You want to talk about somebody that was wide-eyed and, well, you can't say bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He was wide-eyed and white-knuckled the entire weekend.
Sure.
Whoa.
But that said, initial thoughts. I mean, Daytona is a much different animal than obviously the Chicago Street Course or anything that he's really been involved in NASCAR in his relatively inexperienced short time there. How did he do in your mind?
If I had to give him a grade for ARCA and Xfinity combined, because he ran both of them.
That's true.
ARCA, you got to really give him an incomplete because he got wiped out from somebody that was ARCA braking and not even paying attention to when the crash happened.
Yeah, not really of his own doing.
You got to really give him an incomplete, but even though they let him repair the car and get it back out there to where he could make laps. So I really got to give him an incomplete on that one. Xfinity, I'm going to give him a B.
Okay.
I mean, he held his ground. He's inarguably some of the best super speedway equipment since, I'm going to say, 2017 in Xfinity. So I'm going to give him a B. I mean, he held his ground respectively and respectfully well. So this week and today, we'll see if that B can be upgraded to a B plus or even A minus.
And I saw him in qualifying yesterday. I watched the Xfinity Series qualifying yesterday. And he held a very nice car. Again, you're going on the super speedway rules package at a place like Atlanta, but obviously Atlanta's a much tighter track. It's 1.5 miles versus 2.5 miles. But yeah, I mean, he held a very nice car in qualifying, and that's a good start. Now, you get yourself out in traffic and things obviously change real fast.
It will. I'll be interested to see this afternoon how he holds up in Atlanta.
And we will be there to see it live and in person. We'll report on it next week. As for the slate for this weekend, as opposed to last weekend, the weather beautiful here in the southeastern part of the United States of America, so it looks like everything is on the go. Right next door to CRN headquarters at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Craftsman Truck Series going to get things going with the Freight 208 on MRN Radio and Fox Sports 1, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time. Daniel Dye claims the pole. That's his first pole of his career in the Truck Series. Then you get to the Xfinity Series. They're going to run the Raptor King of Tough 250 at Atlanta on PRN and Fox Sports 1. Starts 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time. Quick note for those of you that are new to the show. And I know that we get new listeners and new viewers on CRN Live all the time. And we thank you for it. The times that we give you, because the start time tends to be different between radio coverage and television coverage, we give you actual race coverage. We don't give you pre-race, and we only give you the time of actual race coverage beginning. Rookie Jesse Love claims the pole, and this is history-making as well, because this is the first time in Xfinity Series history that a rookie has claimed the pole in the first 2 races of his time in the series.
Super speedways and RCR. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
He will
do it again in race 3. Let's see how you do there.
You do it in 3 and 4, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, now we're talking. But still, history's set. And Cup Series has the stage all to themselves on Sunday. It's the M Better Health 400 airs on Fox and PRN Radio, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. Qualifying will be later on today as well. In fact, we'll be listening to it as we're driving over. Formula E is off. Everyone else that we cover has yet to start their respective seasons. But guess what? They're about to. So that'll bring us to a point where I think what we'll do, I'll tell you what, let's do this, and then we'll take a fairly early break. Speaking of the Daytona 500, final television or viewing numbers for the 66th running of the Great American Race, the Daytona 500, are in. Again, delayed until Monday, shows a drop in viewers from 2023's race. It should be noted, again, the race was delayed to Monday. That is a factor, because last year's race, which drew in just shy of 9 million viewers, aired on Sunday at its regularly scheduled time because the weather was not a factor. But if you go back to the last time the race was delayed to Monday, which was 2020, the numbers are also down from that year. Nielsen reports about 6 million people tuned in Monday afternoon to see the Daytona 500. That's down from, again, more than 8 million that checked out last year's race. And it's also down from that 2020 race. Drew in about 7.33 million people. So it's down, give or take, about 1 million or so people from the last time we saw a delay. But even though the TV viewing is a little bit different, what I have to admit that I was thoroughly impressed by was looking at the stands. Because when you see a rain delay that goes to Monday, there are a lot of people that plan their weekend around it, but they also don't necessarily work in a rain delay because of lack of vacation time or whatever.
True.
Doesn't really matter what the reason is. They just don't tend to work it in. It seemed like a whole heck of a lot of people did, because the grandstands looked to be more than 90% full Monday.
That was arguably one of the, if not the biggest Monday crowd I've ever seen at a race.
So congratulations to them. I think it's a great, great deal that they were able to do that. The viewership thing being down, again, it was President's Day. God only knows what these people were doing instead of watching it. But, there's a lot of stuff that's going on.
There's no telling. It could have been an awful lot of bankers there on Monday.
It very well could have been. Who knows? So let's go ahead and take the break. When we come back, there was a lot of talk about this, because throughout the course of the week and just, listening to various people and reading various things, I heard, for example, Larry Reynolds, Fox Sports, and Sirius XM Satellite Radio talk about the fact that they don't generally put foot cams in a car for the Daytona 500. You'll see it for road course race because of all the work that they're doing, but they did for the Daytona 500, and telemetry showed why. And NASCAR is actually doing a deep dive investigation. We'll tell you all about it when we come back on CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. 2 tires only and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back into the show. Steve West, Matt Nicholson, producer John Myers with you on this particular final weekend in the month of February. We already got there? Wow. Okay, then. Next weekend, you think the racing list was intense this week. Wait until next week. We got more. Can't wait. But if you watch the race either on delay or you watch the race live on Monday, you might have noted that they had foot cams on a couple of different cars, and they were showing telemetry a lot. Because telemetry that aired on Fox Sports showed more than one occasion when even the leader of the Daytona 500 was running at less than full throttle. And that seems kind of unusual because usually if you get to a Daytona or a Talladega especially, if you're out front, you have to be hammered down. Those who are behind you don't necessarily have to be because they're in a draft and you're pulling them along if you're the leader. But there was a case, and I want to say it was with Ryan Blaney. 12 car was sitting out front, and he was running at about 50% throttle. Now, this was, I'm trying to remember the exact timeline, but I want to say it was just before stage 1 came to, and we were going through green flag pit stops, and the Chevys had decided, you know what, we're just going to let our freak flag fly and run.
I think it was Ross Chastain because Ross Chastain had the
Was
only
it Ross?
foot cam that I remember.
Okay, I couldn't remember exactly who it
think it
was,
was
but
Ross.
I just remember there was somebody that was about 50% throttle. I thought it was Ryan Blaney. I could be wrong. Doesn't really matter. Either way, the leader at that point in time was running about 50% throttle.
We'll see where Fox is and I'm just going to say it as it is. Fox is messed up is they're showing your speed and the throttle tracing at the same time.
Sure.
And it's fluctuating, and you're going like, wait a minute. Now, I could get if you're 8th, 9th, 10th in line if it's sitting there 50 to 60% because the air can pull you and you can maintain enough speed. The air can pull you, plus the air off the back of the other cars can push you at the same time.
Sure.
But, okay, why would the leader be fluctuating anywhere from 45 to 60 and still running 184, 185?
Yeah.
That don't add up.
Well, either way, all of this stuff got to the attention of NASCAR. NASCAR Senior VP of Competition, Elton Sawyer, said this on Tuesday, quote, ultimately, we want to drop the green flag on the race, and they're racing as hard as they can until they drop the checkered flag. There's some strategy in between there, and we'll definitely take a much deeper dive into this particular situation and the strategy that goes into it. I think Elton Sawyer just nailed it. This is a strategy call. Okay? How many times have we said this? That there's that old saying in the racing business there's a whole lot of old sayings, but one of them is you don't read the rule book for what is in there, you read the rule book for what isn't in there. I remember quite some years ago, back when that number 12 that is currently driven by Ryan Blaney was driven by another Ryan by the name of Newman. And everyone was wondering how Ryan Newman was getting such great, fantastically wonderful gas mileage.
Carburetor.
That was back when they were running carburetors. Everyone was running the biggest possible carburetor you could by the rules. But the rules didn't state you couldn't run a smaller carburetor.
Yeah, there was a maximum CFM, not a minimum CFM.
So Ryan Newman goes out, and they start talking about this because Ryan Newman had gone to Purdue with an engineering degree, and they start investigating some slightly smaller carburetors, and they realize, you know what, if we get this particular carburetor at this CFM, it's not going to hurt our top speed, but we get better gas mileage. Boom.
I can tell you a little trick. I did the same thing with my dirt late model.
Okay? This is the kind of stuff that we're talking about. We're going to figure out the ways that things work best. You give these drivers and these teams any kind of a loophole, they're going to exploit it. And when it comes to gas mileage, they're going to exploit that too.
I'll for layman's terms here, like I just said, I did the same thing. As he said umpteen thousand times, and we've said it. He said it the most, more than I have. You read the rule book for what's not in there. There's not a rule in any motorsports rule book that I know of anywhere that says you can't change a carburetor to something that is within the rules.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, most of your carburetor rules and fuel flow rules say if you've got an engine set up with carburetor, let's go back to the old days.
Sure.
You have a maximum CFM, not a minimum CFM. All right? My engine builder, I remember getting the phone call. Said, hey, your motor's ready. Bring me both carburetors. I'm going, why both? Okay. I'll go ahead and say it. I had an 850 CFM carburetor. Guess what the rules were? 850 and below.
Okay.
I had an 850 and I had a 600. It was technically a 650, but it was roughly a 700. We're going to call it a 650.
Okay.
I had big boy and the baby. That's what I call it, big boy and the baby.
I like that.
All right. If I put the big boy on there and the dyno, I physically seen the chart on the dyno on the computer when it was dyno. Big boy was on there at maximum horsepower. I was pushing 740.
Okay.
740 in the late model is a lot.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Super, and this is an all steel motor. Let me emphasize that, an all steel engine. Super late model engines in aluminum pushes 825 ish. Okay. If I put baby carburetor on there, I only lost about 100 horsepower.
Not really losing that much.
Depending on the track conditions, keep me from having to change a gear. If I was happy with how the car was driving with the gear that was in there,
Flip the carburetor.
change the carburetor.
There you go.
Because I could go from an instant big motor to what will be called a spec motor. A little big motor to little motor. Little motor to big motor on tracks on dirt makes a huge difference.
Yeah. This is the thing. These teams, they're going to work within the rules as much as they can, specifically the gray areas, and they're going to find out what works best for them. And if it turns out that it makes something like a Daytona 500 a fuel mileage race, then that's what it does. Okay? The only way that NASCAR is going to be able to stop that is if they mandate you have to run full throttle if you're out front. And here's the thing. Why in the world why would you mandate that? Let the racers race. Let them do what they do. It's not that hard.
It's these people that is on this little, I still call it the Bird app. Steve calls it Twix.
Yes.
That like to chirp, that don't need to chirp, and NASCAR's going, oh my gosh, we need to look at this.
No.
And I don't think I would have Elton Sawyer out front preaching this. Elton Sawyer didn't have the most spectacular driving career.
Elton Sawyer played within the rules when he was driving too, and he knows it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a nothing burger, and you need to leave it alone. It's nothing. Kaulig Racing, as we talked about, made the surprising move to drop A.J. Allmendinger full-time from Cup down to full-time Xfinity this year. At least publicly, Allmendinger saying all the right things. I'll give him that.
Anybody needs to scratch their head this morning, here you go.
Yeah. Here's the thing. What it also means now is that the Cup Series car, the number 16, is what we tend to call a star car. Now, Allmendinger did run it at the Daytona 500. New to Kaulig Racing this year, Josh Williams, full-time in the Xfinity Series. He will be in the Cup Series car this weekend at Atlanta. But they're not going to fill out all the races between the two of them. Other drivers are going to get a chance. One driver just announced this week is all of 22 years old, and he'll be making his Cup Series debut in the number 16 in race number 3 when they go to Vegas. It's Derek Kraus. Kraus will have Western States Flooring as his primary sponsor on the 16 for the race, and it's not the first time for him at Kaulig. He got 8 starts in Xfinity Series competition with them last year, even practiced and qualified the 16 Cup Series car for Allmendinger at Richmond last year, but all of that was in a part-time role. Mainly, he was a sim driver when it came to Cup Series for Kaulig. So it's Derek Kraus, who, by the way, did not race last year on a full-time basis. The last time he was full-time in NASCAR was 2022, and that was in the Truck Series. After Vegas, he will get rides in the 16 Cup Series car at Phoenix, spring, then Kansas and Darlington in May, Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway in June, and he will be back at Phoenix when they're at the season finale there in November. Those are the ones known at this time. More are possible, obviously. We thank Kaulig Racing for the pick at Kraus and Kaulig Gira seen on CRN Live on YouTube. I mean, this is the same situation for me that I kept wondering, what in the world are you doing, Spire? Remember when Spire Motorsports came in, they only had the one car. They only had the 77 car. Mm-hmm. And they kept throwing different drivers in the car week after week. basically it was a different driver seemingly every time. You want to do that in the Xfinity Series, knock yourself out. This is the Cup Series, where you're spending minimum $20 million, more likely upwards of $25 million, to have a car that you want to run out front. And you're spending that much money, and you're going to go and put... I'm not taking anything away from Derek Kraus. Congratulations. Hope you have a good time in your Cup Series debut at Vegas. But is that your best move? When you have A.J. Allmendinger sitting on the bench, trying to figure out why he was busted down to the Xfinity Series, and all you can say is, well, we thought we would have better results with him in the Cup Series car? You gave him 1 year. You gave him 1 year. It's kind of like Red Bull giving Nick DeVries less than half a season before saying, you know what? Yeah, yank him.
I know our resident state of Illinois viewer and Indiana Midwestern viewer would disagree with me on this one, but I don't think Derek Kraus is the best move right now. Smaller divisions, truck and super late models, give me Kraus. I'll take him all day.
Yeah, you want to run him in a star car in the Xfinity Series, knock yourself out.
I'll give him some shots in Xfinity, but you're throwing him in the Cup after running a handful of Xfinity races?
So your odds on him falling flat on his face.
My odds? I'm going to call it even odds right now.
Yeah. In fact, I might even go so far as to say, I might go so far as to say 2/3 probably he will end up falling flat on his face. And I'm not disrespecting Derek. I'm saying he's got a severe lack of experience.
A huge learning curve.
Oh, yeah. Huge learning curve.
Just same principle and concept to where Shane Van Gisbergen's inaugural maiden flight in a Cup car on an oval is at Talladega. That's all I can do is, oh boy.
Gonna be fun.
Here we go.
Gonna be fun, boys. You know, this is trial by fire. I wish Derek Kraus nothing but the best, but the general... the learning curve for somebody who has the lack of experience that Derek Kraus has. Again, last time he was full-time in any series in NASCAR was 2022. That was in the Truck Series. You can do sim all you want. And sim does tell and teach you a lot. Just ask this guy right over here, our resident racing driver. Sim can tell you a lot. But in the end, sim can't put you in a situation where you're behind the wheel in traffic with 38, 39 other cars on the track at a place like Las Vegas. Sim can't do all that.
Here's my way to describe exactly what he just said. You can set in that simulator, and it can give you the feel and the emulation of how the track pitches and turns and nooks and crannies and whatever you want to call it are. But until you put a 5-point harness over your shoulders and across your lap belt, and that little crotch strap that goes up the middle, put your hands on that wheel and lay your foot on that throttle pedal, you're in a whole nother galaxy.
Yeah. For Derek Kraus, the best way to put this is you can plan to be in a fist fight all you want. You can make your plans and say, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. Guess what? When the first punch lands, that plan's out the window.
Yep.
Good luck.
It is.
This is breaking news as of late last night / this morning. Pair of Stewart-Haas racing rides had the roof rail deflectors taken off the cars and confiscated by NASCAR after going through pre-qualifying inspection on Friday. The 10 of Noah Gragson, the 41 of Ryan Preece had to put on new deflectors, go back through the inspection process, which they passed without any problems. But because of the other ones that were taken off and are going to go back to the NASCAR R&D Center, we don't know whether they're going to be found to be outside the rules. In the end, any possible penalties will come down either Tuesday or Wednesday. Also noted that the 47 of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. failed pre-qualifying inspection twice, meant he will choose his pit stall last. The car engineer got ejected for the weekend, will not be allowed back into the track. All right, roof rail deflectors. What does that do for you? at a place like in Atlanta?
Roof rail deflectors. That's going to be side force. That's going to be what's called side bite. Side force for the car was in the corner, give it better handling. My guess, it was probably too short.
Okay.
Cut some of the airflow down to make the car just a little bit quicker through the corner.
Gotcha. We'll have more information on that.
Guess.
Yeah, we'll have more information on that next week. They were pretty vague about the whole thing. They just said, "Yep, we took them." That was it. This charter agreement between the Cup Series and NASCAR, good grief. We've been talking about this for about a year now, about the pending end of it, and it does end at the end of this season. But the latest deadline for talks passed by without a resolution. That was the end of January 31st. Guess what? We're almost a full month later now. No sense of if and or when the two sides are going to sit back down and come to the negotiating table. Cup Series team owners collectively have hired a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Kessler. Kessler is an attorney with Winston & Strawn LLC. Kessler is considered one of the best antitrust lawyers in the United States of America. They announced this move last Saturday after the 15 chartered teams had a quick meeting that NASCAR officials they said were invited to but chose not to attend. Now, reasons why the charter renewal talks have stalled, initially due to wanting to get the television rights deal signed, sealed, and delivered. Okay, got that done. And then when things still didn't move forward, it prompted the Cup teams to reject a further continuance beyond January the 31st of that exclusive negotiating rights window. Now, here's what this means technically. I use the word very carefully, technically. And we'll find out why here in just a moment. This technically means that Cup Series teams could go out and they could be in their own stock car racing series.
Anybody remember Carton IRL? Here we go.
Yeah. It does seem unlikely. One member of the team's negotiating committee, specifically Curtis Polk of 2311, no, not 23 by 1. He talked to the Associated Press, said, quote, "We want to make a deal. We're just looking for a fair deal. There is no give and take. We've been told this is all there is. There is no flexibility." That's not a negotiation, and he's right. Cup teams want a little bit bigger piece of the financial pie after the new media rights deal was taken care of, but it's not really limited to just that. Teams are wanting the charters actually also to become permanent to them. NASCAR to date has rejected the last part of that proposal. They want to stick to the idea that NASCAR owns the charters and is effectively handing them out to the teams based upon the performance, and they have the option to pull those charters back if the performance remains at the bottom 36 for 2 or more consecutive years.
Hi, Rick Ware.
The AP, Associated Press, is reporting that NASCAR stopped negotiating collectively and has tried to talk to teams individually. That's a bad move.
Yeah, but you have to, AP, who's tied with the AP doing motorsports, you got to take that with a grain of salt.
I know, but I'll take them at their word, and if that is indeed the truth, then it's a bad move.
Yeah, it is.
Because, why? Let's just say, for example, that Matt here owns a Cup Series team, and that I own a second Cup Series team, and John owns a third. If NASCAR comes walking up to Matt and goes, "Hey, by the way, let's see if we can't work out a little bit of deal here, and then we'll talk to Steve and John later." Are you really going to do that, or are you going to look at the two of us and go, shouldn't they be involved? Shouldn't we all come to the proper conclusion before we all sit down at a table and map this out?
Yep, it's going to be the latter more than the earlier.
I mean, in this case, where we're competing owners, we're all good friends here on the show, but as competing owners, I don't know. Matt may hate John's guts. I don't know.
Well, then.
I love you too, man.
Yep. Sure, whatever. I'll wreck you tomorrow.
But in the end, we're all in the same boat. We're all competing as team owners in the exact same sport, in the exact same division of said sport. Mm-hmm. And we all want to succeed. Mm-hmm. Now, Matt would like to win all the races. I'd like my team to win all the races. John would like his team to win all of the races as well, because that means the ultimate success. But if Matt's going off and doing his own thing and it hurts John and myself, it doesn't benefit John and me to continue in it, does it?
Nope.
And if John and I leave and Matt's the only one left, is it really considered winning when he's the only one left standing playing the game?
Nope. No, it's really not.
Also, you might have noted that when the negotiations windows closed, not anything holding the teams to the Cup Series. At this time, there's been no talk of creating a new stock car league to compete with NASCAR, but it should be noted that it's an option. Unlikely as it would be to become reality. Wasn't Cale Yarborough involved in an idea of trying to start something back in the 80s or 90s?
I think so.
Yeah. Notice how well that worked. We'll be back right after this.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network.
Sylacauga Marine.
We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back into the show. I'm Steve West alongside with Matt Nicholson, producer John Myers. Appreciate you joining us here on this Saturday morning. Atlanta is where NASCAR is racing next weekend. We've got a couple of other series getting into action. We'll be talking about that as we get further on into the show. Right now, I want to talk a little Xfinity Series stuff, where last week we talked about a crash that NASCAR driver Chris Hacker suffered in South Carolina as he was on his way to Daytona. Not to race, but he was going to take the racing in. And again, he's a driver within the series. He just doesn't have a full-time ride. I think he was going down there basically to kind of press the flesh and see if he couldn't latch on with somebody.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the crash, we noted, was serious enough last week that he underwent emergency surgery right after it and was listed as of last week's show in stable condition. We got more details throughout the course of the week, early this week, on his injuries, and they're pretty big. Among the injuries he sustained, a collapsed lung, a lacerated kidney and adrenal gland, multiple spinal fractures, specifically to the T1, 2, and 3, and C7. Ouch. Doctors determined that too much damage occurred to his spleen, so they removed it. That's something producer John is familiar with. There's no timetable for his release from the hospital at this time. Our thoughts and our prayers right here at CRN go with him for a speedy and full recovery. As to when he might be able to get back in a car, that's going to be a while.
I think it's going to be this year with a T1, T2, T3, and C7 broke.
Yeah. It's going to be a while.
Yep.
We wish him the best. Junior Motorsports got a picture on this one, by the way. They've announced they're going to pluck a kid by the name of Carson Quapple out of his ZMAX Cars Tour late model ride, give him a chance to race in the Xfinity Series this year. If the name Quapple sounds familiar, it should. Carson is the son of former Cup Series racer Travis Quapple. There's another connection, by the way, here. He'll be in the number 88 for the ride in the spring Martinsville race. Sponsorship, Junior Motorsports announced, will come in the coming weeks. Thanks to Junior Motorsports for the look at the young Quapple, as seen right now on CRN Live on YouTube. He does drive for Junior Motorsports in their late model program. And by the way, he will be now the 5th driver out of their late model program to go up and drive for the Xfinity Series team as well. It's worked out pretty well in the past for a couple of those drivers, notably one Josh Berry. Ring a bell?
Yep.
Quapple has raced in both the ARCA Menards and Craftsman Truck Series as of last year. He did finish second in the ARCA race at Kansas for his best result of the year. The son of Travis Quapple made his Cup Series debut at Martinsville some 20 years ago. So think about this. Travis Quapple makes his Cup Series debut at Martinsville. Carson gets to make his Xfinity Series debut at Martinsville, same place that his dad made his Cup Series debut. That's pretty cool.
Good stuff right there.
Like it.
Good stuff.
Hopefully the kid does well.
Yep.
And I'll ask this. I mean, yeah, Josh Berry seems to have acquitted himself well, even getting the chance to go up to the Cup Series. Granted, not in a Chevrolet. He moved over to Stewart Haas Racing. Mm-hmm. Going from the Cars late model tour to Xfinity, in this case, Xfinity Series Racing. How big of a jump?
Huge.
Even at a place like Martinsville,
Huge.
which does kind of tend to even things out a little bit?
Huge.
Okay.
Heavier car, a lot more horsepower.
All right.
There, that's all you need to say. Heavier car, a lot more horsepower.
Get a lot of practice in there. A lot of practice,
I
Carson.
mean, he can. I mean, I think he's run some super late model races of late, so that'll be a little bit closer. But the super late model cars are a lot lighter than Xfinity cars.
Yeah. And then you're also talking about, a few runs in the ARCA Menard Series last year. I'm sorry, the ARCA Menard Series and the Xfinity Series cars aren't as similar as many would like to believe.
ARCA's more similar to trucks because of the horsepower level.
There you go. Speaking of the Truck Series, Kyle Busch might have sold off his Craftsman Truck Series operation last year, but he's still the winningest driver in series history, and he is a driver that many teams would love to put in their truck, even if they could only do it for the maximum of 5 races a year by NASCAR rules. Well, later today, as we air live, Busch is going to get in the first of his 5 allowed races in the Truck Series this year at Atlanta. In effect, he's returning to his old operation because you might remember he sold off Kyle Busch Motorsports to Spire Motorsports. He'll be driving their number 7 Chevrolet Silverado and does indeed plan to run the maximum allowed 5 races, saying he will be in the truck again at Vegas, then again at Bristol, then again at Texas, and finally at Darlington, meaning all 5 of his races will actually come early in the year. He's going to be done with his 5 by May 10th.
That's a little surprising.
Yeah, I would have thought they would have been more spread out over the course of the year.
Yeah. I would have thought they'd been more spread out. I thought he would have had Pocono, that middle swing like Pocono. I wasn't going to say Indianapolis because IRP, that's the playoffs.
Yeah. So you were thinking more June into July?
Yeah, typically what he usually runs, June into July.
Yeah, chose to get them all done early. Meantime, though, the skeleton of Kyle Busch Motorsports does remain, even if it's kind of dormant. The organization has filed suit against Rev Racing. KBM is claiming that Rev Racing owes them about $250,000 due to Rev being in breach of contract. KBM states that they partnered with Rev to field a truck for Nick Sanchez in 2023, but the Rev missed out on several payments in relation to said truck. Rev Racing said it's likely a clerical error somewhere, and they're working to fix the matter, hopefully to get it done before it makes its way to an actual courtroom.
Their words, an amicable way to get it fixed. So $325,000 is what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially about 3 full race-ready trucks. The 2 truck was basically the de facto 3rd KBM truck last year, even though it was a Rev Racing truck.
Sure.
It was the 3rd KBM truck, point blank, because it had all KBM staff.
Oh, yeah. And that's why it did quite well.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Rev Racing, but Kyle Busch,
Yeah.
Motorsports, better organization, better setup.
So, yeah. Max Siegel better get some money together.
Work on it quick. Speaking of Nick Sanchez, got a picture of this, and this is a pretty cool picture. He got the win at the season opener at Daytona. But as much even as a career boost as that is, he got a little bit more of a boost when racing legend Mario Andretti posted on social media, quote, "Way to go, Nick Sanchez. Best way to start the season. You and the Gainbridge Sport team really rock," quote unquote. You can see the two of them buy the truck on CRN Live on YouTube thanks to MSN.com. But it does bring up an interesting point. Because the team is not really called Gainbridge Sport. Right? So, remember that conversation that Matt and I were talking about maybe Andretti Global becoming involved in NASCAR? Let's revisit that for just a moment, shall we?
Okay, let's put some dots. Let's put some dots together here. So far this year, okay, we got Marco Andretti is going to be making some Truck Series starts.
Yes.
For Bruce Cook, which is essentially he's driving the 04 truck that Corey Roper's going to be has driven. We are going to be driving spot out through the year, but it's going to be a truck fielded by Bruce Cook and Corey Roper together.
Okay.
Truck's going to be sponsored by Group 1001, which is a subsidiary company of Gainbridge.
Right.
Okay. The 7 truck that will be on the track here in about 5 hours-ish, give or take,
Sure.
has the logo emblazoned on it with Group 1001, which is a Gainbridge company, which is tied in with Spire. Okay. Nick Sanchez, who is he sponsored by? Gainbridge.
Yep.
Who is the Rev Racing satellite team of this year? Spire. Gainbridge, Spire, Andretti. Under no circumstances, I do not care, and I don't care if you're a brick wall, a pine tree, or a concrete column on an overpass going over an interstate in this United States of America. I will argue with you, and you cannot. You argue with me all you want to. I don't care. You cannot tell me that Andretti is not silently working within NASCAR, because everything is lining up to the T to signify that he's already there. Why would Marco Andretti just all of a sudden run ARCA at Daytona? He's getting super speedway experience for a reason.
Yeah. And let us make this perfectly clear. We don't have any problem with Andretti being involved in NASCAR. Bring it on. Knock yourself out. Doors wide open. Welcome. Come on in. Water's warm. Have no problem with it at all. Just be open about it. Come on. You're welcome here. We don't care. Mario, heck, you want a Daytona 500. Bring it. Bring it. Love to see it.
Yeah.
Speaking of pictures, Spencer Boyd's gamble on himself, beginning Freedom Racing Enterprises, gaining more and more traction with new partners. Longtime Boyd partner Latitude Aero has extended their deal with him. They're going to be a primary sponsor in the 76 truck. Actually starts this weekend at Atlanta. More races to come. You can see the truck right now on CRN Live on YouTube, thanks to Freedom Racing. Excuse me. It's a pretty good looking truck too. And I got to admit, I'm kind of rooting for him.
You better find some speed today.
I get that, but at the same time, we here in the United States of America, we tend to root for the underdog in the first place. We kind of like to see the underdog succeed, maybe even win. Heck, it's why the movie Hoosiers was such a big hit back in the 1980s.
That's true.
We like to see the underdog come in and actually be successful. I'd like to see Spencer Boyd come in and be successful and turn that Truck Series operation into something really, really big. I think it'd be great for him. I think it'd be great for the series. It's great news. It's great publicity.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, knock yourself out. But, yeah, got to find a little bit more speed. Speaking of pictures, really making producer John work here in the Craftsman Truck Series side of things. Thor Sport Racing going to put a driver by the name of Connor Jones in their number 66 truck. Excuse me. I'm going to have to get something to drink here during the break. They're actually going to put him in the truck 13 times this coming year. And for those many of those races, Cincinnati Incorporated, which is an Ohio-based industrial tool manufacturer, will be the primary sponsor. You get a look at the truck right now on CRN Live on YouTube, courtesy of ThorSport, and see how the truck will look. And it's a pretty interesting look. I mean, we've seen Cincinnati in NASCAR before. It's not a radical departure from anything that we haven't seen in the past. It is a good-looking truck there. Connor Jones is another one of those situations where you're kind of going, though, who?
Yeah.
What do you know about Connor, if anything?
Not much. not much.
You do that, I'll get a drink.
He will really get his first super speedway style start today, because running today in Atlanta. But he's mainly been a short track and road course driver.
Okay.
So I think they're elevating him up, and I wouldn't be surprised to see ThorSport go back to a 5-truck team fully here soon, or they're grooming him to take over the 88 when Matt Crafton decides to hang it up.
How close do you think Matt Crafton is to doing that?
He's 47. I think he's within a few years.
A couple of years? So basically you think that this is kind of setting the table basically for Connor Jones if he performs. And I'm not going to say he has to, blow the socks off of anybody.
Yeah.
But, if he performs admirably, he can hold his own. You're saying this is kind of a tryout.
I think so, yeah.
In a way. Okay.
Yep.
All right. NASCAR fans who are also gamers, you got yourselves a new option. This one coming from a group called Hutch Games. It's entitled NASCAR Manager. You can see how the home home screen is going to look on CRN Live on YouTube. Thanks to Hutch Games for that. It's free for download to whatever smart device you have, whether it's Apple or Android based. In the game, you can race against other racers around the world, or you can build your own NASCAR empire by recruiting, training drivers, customizing how your cars look, setting up the car's tuning, making snap decisions during the course of the game. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we've seen games like this before. Some of them have been successful. Others have just faded into non-existence. So we'll see how well they do.
Yeah.
Am I going to download it? Truth be told, probably not. Just saying.
Same.
No disrespect to Hutch Games. It's just I'm kind of gamed out. I've got enough. In fact, could probably cut some of the games that I currently have.
He just don't know later on he's going to get a first foray into iRacing. Later.
See, then I'd have to cut out a lot of other games. Because I know me well enough to be able to tell you right now that if I did get involved in iRacing in depth, I'd be hooked.
Like me.
And my wife would be really ticked.
Yeah. We'll just leave it out there.
Yeah. NASCAR President Steve Phelps told a group called Sportsnaut.com that he is expecting to get the Cup Series to put races outside the U.S. as soon as next season. Now, you're sitting here thinking to yourself, why is this not in the Cup Series news? We'll get to that. As of Friday, yesterday, specifically at Atlanta, Phelps said, quote, "I have nothing to announce today, but I would be surprised next year from the 2025 schedule if we didn't go north of the border and we didn't go south of the border," unquote. He added that there will be plans to race in Southern California again, but the site, not Phelps, Sportsnaut.com, is claiming that it seems like the Busch Light Clash might be taken out of the LA Coliseum, and might actually be run in Mexico. Now, the weather works, obviously, because there's only so much you can do in early February when it comes to weather. It's either going to be too cold or you're going to get snow. Hi, Mark. So you got to run somewhere in nicer weather. Mexico's probably a pretty good chance of being able to get that. Canada, on the other hand, while he didn't address it, any race there would have to be probably during the summer months, easy for me to say, meaning that while the Clash, being a Cup-only event, a regular season race in Canada probably would include the accompaniment of either the Xfinity and or the Craftsman Truck Series to do a full weekend. That's why I put it here. And I got no problem with that. I say work out a deal with Montreal, put it on the same circuit the Formula One runs, and let's go. I don't have a problem with either one of these. Save for the fact that if you're going to Mexico, better have really good security around those haulers as they go through. Because you're going through some areas in Mexico that I don't want to go into. Hour 2's next.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back. 4 tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome into hour number 2 here of this edition of the Championship Racing Network. Steve West, Matt Nicholson, producer John Myers with you. And since announcing back in January that they were going to be ceasing operations, we really haven't heard anything out of the SRX or Superstar Racing Experience. But the co-founder of the series, Ray Evernham, got to talking about it this week with Sportsnaut and said that what it turned into was not what he was envisioning when he and Tony Stewart got things rolling. He said he only wanted to use a couple of NASCAR drivers in any particular race. Speaking of current ones. Wanted to use only a couple of NASCAR drivers in any particular race, but from year 1 to year 2 and on into year 3, turned out to be much more NASCAR than pretty much any other series. And after year 2, the idea of taking a local ringer from each and every track was ditched for year 3, and that's brought about Evernham saying this, quote, "I'd like to use Cup drivers once in a while, same with the IndyCar people, but it was really about bringing in the superstars that weren't racing anymore, mixing them in with local short track hero, which I think is really important." So, could SRX return? Well, Evernham does think that there is a place for it or a series like it, but he's not sure if SRX will actually be able to come back and fill that hole. And that is where the IROC series came up. You might remember us talking about this recently. Evernham bought the rights to the series, and actually turns out he bought all the last racers from the All-Star series that they used back when they were racing in 2006. You might remember those Pontiac Trans Am bodied cars. Kids, ask your parents. Added that he would like to bring back as many of the drivers that have competed in IROC throughout the years, going back to its debut years, 1970s, until it died in 2006. Evernham said, quote, "We're shooting for the fall if there's interest in this thing. Where do we go from there? Our goal is to get those cars back on the track and then see how popular it can get." Said he also envisions that IROC needs to probably borrow at least one page from the SRX series. And that is avoiding super speedways in favor of mostly short tracks.
I disagree with that one.
Okay.
The IROC cars can and will handle a super speedway with ease.
Oh, sure. They ran on Daytona every single year.
Daytona and Talladega.
They ran on Talladega most years.
Until the latter years, yeah. But Talladega was a staple for IROC.
Sure.
IROC, for me as a kid, up until IROC stopped coming to Talladega, I look forward to the IROC race more than anything else there. IROC was fantastic.
Sure. I loved watching IROC. I did. I loved watching the IROC series. I was kind of upset over the fact that I learned that there were only 4 in a year. Once I realized that, I was like, really? I want more.
Knowing
4 or 6, whatever it was. A handful.
It was a handful. I think, 4 or 6. I think it was 6, actually.
Doesn't matter. It was, I know I wanted more.
That, and on ABC.
Oh, yeah. Cool
perfect.
Stuff. It was cool stuff.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
But Evernham was right about the local ringer stuff. That is what added the flair of year 1.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We were talking every single week. We were talking about those local ringer guys, the stars of the local tracks.
Doug Kobe, Luke Fenhouse, Matt Hirschman.
Mm-hmm.
Who else would be that? Eldora. Who ran Eldora? I can't remember which ones they brought in for the dirt, because they brought in one for each one of them. They didn't use the dirt ringer for both tracks.
Right.
They ran one for each one of them. Guys like that is what made it like, hey, we got to get on our elbows here now. We're at this guy's house.
Yeah, this guy knows this track like the back of his hand.
And look what specifically Slinger. Look what Luke Fenhouse done with Marco Andretti and Tony Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Now look where Luke Fenhouse is stepping up to. Look where it is catapulting him up to by putting itself on that national stage on CBS. And ta-da, here he is, even further.
Big time.
But I could see, depending on how many cars how many cars they run to start. Let's just say
10.
Let's say 8.
8. Okay, we'll go 8
to start. Run it in an exhibition style.
Okay.
Run an exhibition style. Invitation only. I would say exhibition style 5-race exhibition series to see where you stand in year one.
Sure.
You really got nothing to lose. You got all to gain, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would
when
agree.
you fine tooth those cars and make sure they're still in competitive shape from when they last left the track in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
I would say to start, I would go Atlanta. I'd take on Rockingham.
Rockingham would be fun.
I would say Atlanta, Rockingham. Take them to Richmond.
Okay.
You got a short track intermediate, a de facto super speedway. Let's use that word. Let's throw in another short track on the more local regional scene. Let's go South Boston.
Okay. Yeah, SRX ran there.
And I would say your 5th track, I'd go Hickory.
Okay.
Just run an exhibition style, and you would probably slam Hickory standing room only all the way around the track.
Yeah, and especially if you're trying to go through and you're trying to attract some of the guys that used to run IROC.
Sure.
You know, the guys that aren't racing full-time anywhere right now. Go get them, bring them back. Like you said, invitation, exhibition, knock it out. I'd go see it in a heartbeat. If they came to Atlanta, I'd be there. I think it'd be a lot of fun to go see that.
And then some.
I think it'd be a lot of fun. Turning our attention to the National Hot Rod Association, where Alabama's own pro stock motorcycle competitor Steve Johnson took some time away from preparation for 2024 and awarded his first, quote, be a technician, unquote, scholarship that he started off recently. The winner was a kid by the name of Ledge Putman. He attends Lawson State Community College in the city of Birmingham. What the Be a Technician Scholarship is going to do for him, it's going to assist the student who's in the school's manufacturing training program, which is done in collaboration with Ford, GM, and Toyota. Students in the program spend 8 weeks in classroom studies. Then they go work at a dealership for 8 more weeks. The scholarship awards $4,000 to help cover the cost of the tools that are needed to continue his education and get started in his career as a technician/mechanic. A representative for Ford said of this program, quote, when students get finished, they are fully certified technicians. The dealerships are going to keep them, so we are filling that lack of workforce. That's cool.
Go for it.
Congratulations to Lawson State. Congratulations to Steve Johnson for doing the scholarship. And hopefully this means good things, and maybe something like this, we can continue to expand it out at many more schools with many more racers.
Good stuff indeed.
Skag Racing continues to expand out their reach in the NHRA. They've now acquired Paul Richards Racing. Good grief. So here's what the deal is. This brings along the incumbent driver, Dave Richards, from the 2023 season, folds in the former Versatran Bluebird funny car operation into the Skag Racing fold. Other than joining the bigger operation, the team effectively remains the same. Same driver, same crew chief, the entire crew all remains. It's now just under the Skag Racing operation, which now consists of Skag Richards funny car operation, the Skag Wilkerson funny car operation, that's the one with Daniel Wilkerson behind the wheel, and the Skag Ashley Top Fuel ride with Top Fuel driver Justin Ashley. Skag Racing, we've talked about this. We talked about this when this whole thing started. Skag Racing has long been involved as a major partner sponsor of teams in the National Hot Rod Association, specifically this high level, what we used to call the Camping World Drag Racing Series, now the Mission Foods Drag Racing Series. Top Fuel, Nitro Funny Car, Pro Stock Motorcycle. They've long been heavily involved as a sponsor in that. Now all of a sudden they're getting into team ownership. That's huge.
That's really good for sports in general, if you ask me.
Yeah. It shows the interest for me. It continues to show that there is an increasing interest in getting back involved in motorsports as a viable partnership for these companies to spend their money on. We're seeing new sponsors coming into NASCAR, new sponsors coming into IndyCar, new sponsors coming to the NHRA. Even new sponsors going into Formula One, as expensive as that is. And all of that's good across the board because they're all recognizing something. Either the ratings, viewership for these series are going up, or at least they're staying flat. In the case of NASCAR, which again, here in the United States, is the king of motorsports television here in the U.S., it's relatively flat, but it's still the highest of all of them. Meantime, we're seeing an increase in viewership in F1 year over year. How many years now have we been reporting a year-over-year increase in IndyCar viewership? Fox Sports and the NHRA are saying the exact same thing, and the numbers are bearing it out.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the interest in this is coming back. I think it's great. It's fantastic.
Yep. I mean, it's, even though it's considerably cheaper to get into NHRA ownership and team ownership,
sure,
it's still good that you got one brand expanding their operation across 3 teams.
Yeah.
So,
and the funny thing is when they started this, they only dealt with initially the Wilkerson side and the Ashley side, and they said, but we are going to do 3 cars, and we're sitting there looking at, okay, where's the third one? There you go.
yeah, they was with Maynard last year.
Yeah, they were with Maynard, and
Maynard
I
last
want
year
to
and the year
say
before.
they were involved in sponsorship and pro stock at Elite,
I think so, yeah.
if I remember right. And from what I understand, a lot of that sponsorship is probably going to stick around.
Yeah, this guy, at some point this year, this guy will get his full NHRA baptism at some point.
Yeah, I can't wait. Turning our attention to the IndyCar series, and we are really thinking about maybe trying to go to Indy 500. It's on the bucket list. I'll tell you that. Meantime, we noted on the show last week, David Malukas suffered torn ligaments in his left hand during a mountain biking accident a couple of weeks ago. Following surgery, he's going to be forced to miss the first couple of races of 2024 as he undergoes recovery and rehabilitation. Well, Arrow McLaren Racing is now scrambling to try to find a replacement to sit in while waiting for Malukas to be cleared because they didn't really have a reserve driver as such. Testing began last weekend. It started with a guy by the name of Callum Ilott. You might remember him. He drove last year, and the past 2 years, actually, for Uncos Hollinger Racing, but he wasn't retained for 2024. Ilott said of this chance, quote, obviously, I feel sorry for David and the team. It's not easy to be in this position, especially just ahead of the start of the season. I wish him the best and a speedy recovery, but I'm glad I'm able to help out the team, and it's a privilege to test this week with Arrow McLaren. I'm thankful they're considering me. No decision has been made yet, but I would say that Ilott is probably the best of a fairly thin roster of drivers that are available at this particular late date.
I could agree with that. Even though if you go to Barber, I'm nearby, save you a lot of travel expenses. I could agree with that. Yeah, he's probably the best option they've got right now.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, most of these drivers, they've already gotten their rides. They got these rides a long time ago, settled and ready to go. So,
right.
Yeah, there's just not that many drivers available. It's not that Callum Ilott is a bad driver or a fantastic driver. It's just he's one of the few drivers that has the experience within this series that is still not got a ride. So I would say he's probably the likely choice, but he just hasn't been announced. IndyCar states they've also been working with the promoters of 3 different racetracks to fix some problems that the drivers have been complaining about. First of all, a problem with Turn 3 on the road course, or street course, I should say, at St. Petersburg, Florida. Drivers have been complaining for a few years now about the bumpy surface going through Turn 3. The city has attempted patches in the past, but it always broke down, so they said, you know what? Let's just fix the problem. Hey, what a novel idea. And they repaved the entire turn, or in this case, intersection, so that not only do the IndyCar drivers benefit from it, but so do the people in St. Petersburg, Florida, who have to go through that intersection every single day. Next up, Detroit, also a street course. Remember, they moved it off of Belle Isle a couple of years ago to a downtown course that uses the GM Heritage Center as kind of a centerpiece. But it didn't stop drivers from noting problems with the streets, specifically the straightaway that leads into Turn 3 of that course. They stated that the road was very, very rough and bumpy heading into the braking zone, and because you would do this nice little bouncing thing going into the braking zone, it caused drivers to end up locking up the brakes, flat spotting the tires. All of that was a big problem. City officials there actually had a brain, decided not to try to go through the patches situation, and instead said, you know what? Repave the whole thing. So about 700 feet of that straightaway was repaved in order to fix the problem ahead of the early June race. It should have enough time to set up, cure, and be ready to go. Finally, a place that Matt over there is fairly well versed in, the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Mm-hmm. Dedicated road course where Indycar is set to race in early July. The course has undergone the full repave along the entire 2.3 miles and 13 turns. Really, all that's left is detail work, and what that means basically is the painting, whether or not they're going to put curbing in there.
Don't need curbing.
Okay. But little things like that. It's, the pave is done. Now it's just a matter of getting all the paint work done and all that kind of stuff, and then they'll be ready to go racing.
Any IndyCar teams that need extra spotters, I'm available.
Yeah, he's been there. He's done that. One more track note. IndyCar officials said that they're also going to be policing the move that Joseph Newgarden used to help him claim the 2023 Indy 500. We've got a picture of this that producer John's going to put up here in just a moment. To try to explain this, Joseph Newgarden took the lead from Marcus Ericsson on the backstretch on the final lap of last year's Indy 500. Coming off of turn 4, Newgarden started doing the usual snaking back and forth move to try to keep Ericsson from being able to get a good draft off of him and maybe make a final straightaway pass, which we have seen in the past.
Yep.
But he did what Formula One would call going outside the racing surface or going off the racing line. If the picture is up there, which
at Talladega, better know it's out of bounds.
Yeah, going below the double yellow line, whatever you want to call it. It seems that in this particular situation, when he came off of turn 4, Newgarden actually went down fully into the lane where the drivers would enter pit road and then snaked his way back out on the racing surface just before the wall that separates the race from pit road, the race surface from pit road. Now, as opposed to Formula One, it wasn't against the rules at that time. It is now. Can't do that. If you look right there on our CRN Live, thanks to NBC Sports for this particular picture here that I grabbed, you can see how far down he is. And there's that commitment line. There's that diagonal line, basically, that comes out that extends, 2/3 of the way, basically, from where the pit road wall begins, going this particular direction, back to where they come off of turn number 4. Mm-hmm. To me, the beginning of that white diagonal line, that's your commitment point.
Oh, easily.
In Formula One, if you even have 2 tires below or onto, in this case, the left of that line, Formula One would say you're out of the racing line unless you go onto pit road.
You've exceeded track limits.
Yes. This is massively exceeding track limits here. I understand why they decided to do this.
I get it too, because if you go I'm gonna go lower, even a half second late reaction time, he's nose into the end of that barrier within the pit road.
Oh yeah, and that right there, that's a nasty hit.
Because you're running 220, you're running every bit of 221 coming off that corner.
Oh,
maintaining speed.
Yeah, I would agree.
But at the same time, though, you're at the last lap of the Indy 500. Mm-hmm. You're looking at your spot in the history book, staring at it. There's a thing you got to use called self-policing. If you're going to be, and I'm just going to call it like I said, if you're going to be dumb enough to go that low, you're taking inherent risk.
Oh yeah. You're kind of taking, John, I'm going to ask you to keep this picture up here because I'm going to come back to it.
I can see policing it for 199 laps. I get it. But as the same I would say with Daytona, Talladega, Indianapolis, Atlanta, which Indianapolis you really only can do it at one spot, which is right there on that photo. But Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta, last lap, if you're going to take the inherent risk,
knock yourself out?
Throw it out the window.
Okay. We'll see.
Throw it out the window.
IndyCar president Jay Fry talked to Racer.com about this, said, quote, "We're going to officiate that line. So think of what Newgarden did when he went below that line going into pit in. That will be illegal in 2024. He did nothing wrong in 2023. But this is what you do as a series when it comes to officiating. Things happen. You have to react. something happened. It was a little aggressive. It's the best way to put it. So we're going to take the opportunity to be aggressive by going low towards the pits, away from when they come off of turn 4, and basically, in effect, make it illegal.
See Hail Millen.
Yeah, effectively. Now, if you were on CRN Live on YouTube and you saw that picture, you saw where the safety barrier ended. Okay? You can see it right there in the bottom right-hand corner of that picture. Well, guess what? Safer barriers extended this year. IndyCar has made safety upgrades to the Indy 500. Some 1,700 feet of new catch fence has been added outside of turn 3. And again, as the drivers negotiate turn 4, they'll have about 800 feet of extra safer barrier coming off of the turn, being added basically middle of the turn 4, extending down that front straight. Now, it does impede a little bit, I guess you could say, on the racing surface as a whole. But how many times have we seen drivers come off of turn 4, spinning, and hit the wall after the safer barrier?
Quite a few.
Now we know why they're extending it.
Quite a few.
They want to give it a chance to have that dissipating energy. So, yeah, they're extending it out about another 800 feet past this, which means I'd say probably pretty close to pit in.
Yeah, I would say pretty close for sure.
Yeah, that's probably not exact, but I'd say it's pretty close.
Yep.
When we come back, we got a new sponsorship coming to the IndyCar series that we'll talk about in a minute for the guy with arguably the best name in IndyCar, and if not all of motorsports at this time. That's when we come back on CRN.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Two tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Indeed. Welcome back in. We appreciate you joining us here this morning, and we are talking a little bit of IndyCar here. And AJ Foyt Racing has announced that the season's primary sponsor for the number 41 of Stingray Rob, still love that name. Sorry, I always will. I don't know whether or not he'll be a big success at this level, but it's a great name. It's going to be Pray.com. Pray.com claims to be the number one app in the world for daily prayer and faith-based audio content. Rob said of this partnership, quote, "Faith has been an important part of my journey, and I'm excited to be able to represent that. I'm honored and blessed to partner with Pray.com. Through this partnership, we'll utilize our aligned beliefs and goals to encourage others in the commitment to prayer and grow in the faith community." You can see how the car looks right now on CRN Live on YouTube, thanks to AJ Foyt Racing. Pretty good-looking car. We'll find out whether or not it's a move up for him. Now, scheduling is one of those things that we talk about quite often. Obviously, the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona is one of those deals where it's long before IndyCar starts their season. So generally, we see a whole lot of IndyCar drivers participating as drivers in the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. But once you get into the season, things get a little bit more spotty, especially this year, considering the fact that we have the Olympics and IndyCar already worked with NBC television to kind of set the schedule up to the point where they would not have to race or weren't going to be racing during the couple of weeks where the Olympics were going on to help out their television partner in NBC Sports. But racers are racers. That guy right there, he knows that. Mm-hmm. You're always looking for an opening. One of those actually happens this season in relation to the prestigious 24 Hours Le Mans. A number of IndyCar drivers are going to take advantage of it. 3 current IndyCar drivers are already confirmed to be running in the famed 24 Hours Le Mans. Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, Romain Grosjean, all confirmed. They've been tapped for the race set to run June 15th and 16th. Palou and Dixon will stick with Chip Ganassi Racing. Each of them will be in 2 separate entries for the team. The numbers 2 and 3 Cadillac V-Series R hybrid prototype entries that will be in the hypercar class. Brand new, or I think in its second year. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be there. Meantime, Romain Grosjean, who's running for Juncos Hollinger Racing for IndyCar in 2024, is going to go join the Lynx Lamborghini organization for another hypercar division entry. This one, the number 19 Lamborghini SC63. Should they qualify, this would mark Grosjean's first 24 Hours Le Mans start since 2010. This will be Dixon's 6th start. Alex Palou getting his first start 24 Hours Le Mans.
That one is next on my bucket list.
Yeah. But here's the thing.
I don't want to fly that far to France.
I don't mind the flight. I can tell you right now, though, this is not one of those jaunts that Matt and I are going to take by ourselves, because if I told my wife I was going to France to check out a race, she'd be like, "You're taking me!" And we're making a vacation out of it.
Hey, Karen could go to the wineries in France. We'll go to the race. Fair trade.
Believe me.
Fair trade.
Believe me, it's going to be a longer trip than just for the race. I know my wife.
See you next week, Steve.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
getting on a plane. I'm going back to Atlanta.
Yeah. Matt will be doing the show live. I'll be in France because my wife has kept me there.
Steve, what time is it in France? 1 a.m. I'm
not doing the show.
No.
Let's see. On the heels of being named driver for the 3rd Indy 500 entry for Rahal Letterman, Lanigan Racing Takuma Sato has also maybe found what he is going to be doing after he's done driving. He's been named an executive advisor at Honda Racing. Sato's racing career has almost exclusively been linked to Honda engines and mirrors what Toyota recently announced for former F1 drivers Kazuki Nakajima and Kamui Kobayashi. Honda Racing said Sato will, quote, "provide advice and support in formulating driver development strategies and programs Honda will pursue inside and outside Japan, race entry plans, and the operational structure for racing activities." Huh? In other words, he's a strategist. There will be a marketing aspect to this as well. Honda states that they will, quote, leverage Sato's experience and knowledge as a world-class racing driver to further enhance the Honda Racing brand. It'll be interesting to see how all that comes together.
Nice.
All right. Here's the latest bit of hypocrisy from Formula One. First of all, let's remind you, as you probably well remember, remember Formula One dragging their feet on deciding whether or not Andretti Global was going to be allowed into their exclusive little club? You know, that whole process that began about this time last year when the FIA said, we're accepting applications for teams that are interested in becoming team owners in Formula One. And then that deadline got delayed, I think, into late June. And they finally said, okay, of all the applicants that we got out there, and they said they probably had, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe upwards of 10. One passed muster, and it was Andretti Global. And at that point in time, everything shifted over to the FOM, Formula One Management Group. So from basically July of last year until just a couple of weeks ago, that group shuffled their feet, dragged their feet, created a whole lot of static electricity on every carpet that they ran across, zapped themselves, which apparently created brain damage, and they said, you know what? Yeah, until General Motors is ready to come in, you can't come in to our exclusive little 10-member club. You want to know why? Found out a little bit more. Turns out Formula One management, one of Formula One management's biggest reasons for saying no, none of the numbers that they ran stated that Andretti Global could bring a 10% revenue increase to Formula One year over year.
Bravo, Sierra.
I got news for you, Formula One management. Other than with the possible exception of Ferrari, which has been with Formula One since its inception 76 years ago, there ain't no group that's currently in Formula One that could raise the revenue 10% year over year just by entering your series. Not a one. That's an impossible hurdle to jump over. Mm-hmm. So congratulations on your stupidity, because that's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. And by the way, just to make perfectly clear, the Formula One Management Group is not the commercial rights holders. That's Liberty Media. That just means these are the people that make sure that all the races are scheduled and they get on television around the world. That's all Liberty Media does. Mm-hmm. Formula One Management Group is an entirely different group. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it took how many months to do that? How many weeks have we been talking about this little investigation that Red Bull's turning in when it comes to their team principal, Christian Horner? About a month now. Not even.
About 3 or 4 weeks, yeah.
3-4 weeks. Formula One Management Group has now warned Red Bull to resolve the investigation into Christian Horner's allegations of being overly controlling, up to and including sending inappropriate text messages. Resolve it and resolve it quickly. What? Do you really get to make that call, Formula One Management? Do you honestly really get to make that call? I don't think you do. Horner had his initial hearing on the allegations back on February the 9th. He's denied all allegations since they were revealed and even told ESPN.com that he is confident that things will go into his favor in this investigation and that he will remain as the boss at Red Bull. ESPN, which has the television rights here in the United States of America, has said there is no definitive timeline for this investigation to be finished, but the teams probably would like to get things concluded before the 2024 season gets underway. Clock's ticking.
Yeah, it is.
Seeing as preseason testing happened the second half of this week and first race comes next weekend.
Before he even says anything, ladies and gentlemen, same song, different verse. You'll understand what I'm saying here shortly.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, neither Red Bull officials nor anybody from Formula One are commenting any further on this matter, and since nothing has been decided either way, Horner was at preseason testing this week. It's kind of like being in lodging an appeal of a penalty in NASCAR that says you're suspended for a week or 3 weeks or however long, and as long as you're appealing, you get to race. Good gosh.
Anyways.
As for that testing, let's go ahead and take a break, John, and we'll get back to it. And is this the ultimate end-all, be-all of knowing for certain whether or not Red Bull's going to be as dominant 2024 as they were in 2023? No. I mean, it's preseason testing. Things can still change, and of course, things will change over the course of the year because teams have the ability, and they do, perform upgrades to these cars over the course of the year. Worked out very, very well for Williams. Not so well for Haas. How'd those two teams and the others do? We'll tell you next.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back in. Final segment of this particular weekend show, and then Matt and I jet over to Atlanta. We were talking about preseason testing happening in Bahrain over the last couple of days of this week. Day one of the 3 days of testing saw the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, shockingly not, lead the speed chart. He sped around the Bahrain course in 1 minute, 31.344 seconds. No other driver was within a second of that time of the 18 drivers that posted time. Should be noted, Lewis Hamilton and Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez did not turn a lap on day one. But a second gap between first and second place.
Same song, different verse.
17th and 18th on day one, the Haas F1 twins, who were 4.3 and 4.5 seconds behind Max Verstappen's time, respectively, for Kevin Magnussen and then Nico Hülkenberg. Lando Norris and his McLaren was second quick, and then the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, V-Carbs, you know, the Visa Cash App RB team. Daniel Ricciardo, V-Carb, he was fourth quickest. And that does kind of give me an idea of pretty much how similar the two Red Bull sister organizations might end up being this year. On day two, and for the second time in a few months, Formula One had a drain cover problem. Last November, it happened in Las Vegas when a drain cover came loose during practice and for the inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix, and Carlos Sainz was the unlucky one to hit it, caused major damage to his racer, and brought practice to a halt as the drain cover had to get re-welded into place in order to keep it from happening again. Well, during the second day of preseason practice in Bahrain on Tuesday, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were both going through turn 11 when Leclerc ran over a drain cover that was around a curbside drain. Lewis Hamilton drove over it, got it real loose. He noted on the radio that it was loose, but nothing happened. When Leclerc took the same path through turn 11 on the next lap, he hit it again, and this time caused major damage to his Ferrari. The incident brought a premature end to the day's morning test session, as they now had to go back and lock down the drain cover with plans to add more time to the afternoon session. The bad thing was Leclerc actually did have the fastest time of the morning session in a car that suffered pretty major damage. It was the fastest one of the morning, 1 minute 31.750 seconds, over half a second faster than Oscar Piastri's second quickest lap of the morning. But when they got into the afternoon, the other Ferrari, this one driven by Carlos Sainz, ended up the fastest and the only during test sessions that ended up under 1.5 minutes, 129.921. Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo making up the top 5, all 5 different teams. So interesting to note. 17 drivers took part on the day. Again, the Haas F1 twins were at the back of the field. Magnussen and Hülkenberg 6 and 7 seconds behind Sainz's fastest time, respectively. Slowest time, the V-carb ride, though, of Yuki Tsunoda. He was over 8 seconds off the pace. Ouch. Third and final day of preseason testing was just yesterday, Friday. The fast lap once again set by Ferrari. They showed the way with the quickest time this time. Charles Leclerc behind the wheel pulled a lap 1:30.322. George Russell, Zhou Guanyu, Max Verstappen, Yuki Tsunoda making up the top 5, all of them within 0.6 of a second. At the bottom of the roster for the day, 19 drivers participating. The V-carb ride of Daniel Ricciardo. He was just under 7 seconds slower. It was a better day for the Haas F1 drivers. Nico Hülkenberg turned 89 laps. He was able to post the 11th quickest time, about 1.3 seconds off the fastest time of the day. Kevin Magnussen was 16th quick on the final chart, just under 3 seconds off the pace. So what does this tell us? Not that much, just to be real. A lot of work being done to the cars, and there's still going to be work that they're going to have to do to the cars to try and get them dialed in.
A lot.
We'll find out more next weekend when we talk about practice and qualifying for Bahrain. Sad news out of the world of the F1 with the news that Wilson Fittipaldi Jr., the brother of Emerson and the father of Christian Fittipaldi, passed away Friday. Sao Paulo, Brazil native drove several kinds of race cars when he was a youngster, and in 1966 got as high up as Formula 3. But it was Emerson who was actually destined to make the family name behind the wheel. Even so, in 1971, Wilson was in Formula 1 driving for Lotus F1. We got a picture of Wilson on CRN Live on YouTube right now, courtesy of motorsport.com. Now, Wilson Fittipaldi was also running in Formula 2 races for the Lotus team, scored points in half a dozen races in F2, finished 6th in the final standings that year. It got him a full-time ride in F1 in 1972 for the Brabham F1 team, but he couldn't equal his F2 success. He did get another chance with the team in 1973, claimed his first top 10s, his only top 10s, in Argentina and the famed Nürburgring, and did run one last F1 race for Brabham in 1974, but that was a non-points race. But after that, he was pretty much done as far as Formula 1 was concerned. He began his own team in 1975. It was named after their major sponsor, the Brazil sugar company Copper Sucar, but the car really wasn't a factor in year one. He did convince his brother to leave the McLaren operation to drive for him in 1976. They saw some minor success in 1978, got a second-place finish with Emerson behind the wheel in Brazil. But for the 1980 season, they would merge with the Wolf team, pairing Emerson with future F1 champion Keke Rosberg, father of Nico Rosberg, another future F1 champion. But Emerson retired from Formula 1 at the end of the 1980 season. The team basically withered and folded after the 1982 year. Wilson would pretty much go driving kind of on and off in and around Europe, sometimes with his brother, sometimes not, before he turned his attention to managing his son Christian's career, which saw him run 1992 through 1994 in Formula 1 before he turned his attention to Indycar. After that, again, Wilson kind of teamed up with his brother Emerson, would race together in some sports car events, mostly in and around South America and their home country of Brazil. But he began to suffer some neurological problems, and in 2020, it was reported that he suffered a fall at his home. He was later diagnosed having suffered a cerebral hemorrhage, had to go through surgery before being released a few days later. His health, unfortunately, would continue to deteriorate. He did appear in the paddock at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix last year at Formula One, but then he entered hospital care on Christmas Day in 2023 after choking on a meal that day, which also happened to be his birthday. Family couldn't clear it in time, and he suffered a heart attack. He never got back into the hospital. He passed away there on Friday. Wilson Fittipaldi Jr., 80 years old. Meantime, the sister FIA racing series to Formula One, Formula E, they have, well, all right, let's start with Formula One here. Obviously, as of last year, they've got 3 races in the United States, right? Miami, then COTA, then Las Vegas. That's kind of leading Formula E to think maybe there's room for 2 Formula E races in the United States. The United States has been one of the constants on the Formula E schedule, joining Germany and Britain. In Miami, first it was back in 2015, Miami. Then they went for the next 2 years out to Los Angeles before landing in New York City from 2017 to 2022. But of course, for 2023, because there was construction going on around the planned New York Formula E course, the race got moved back out west to Portland International Raceway, where it'll be run again this year. What else could you do, though? Well, Formula E CEO Jeff Dodds got talking recently and said, quote, obviously we're in Mexico. That's where they started off the season. We're in Portland. I think the North American market, specifically the USA, can sustain another race. It'll be nice for us to have 2 races going forward. I think there's plenty of big, exciting cities to race in. There are many rumors surrounding a potential race in Los Angeles. Rarely is there smoke without a fire in motorsport. I think Los Angeles would be an incredible venue to hold a Formula E race, particularly given the state of California's focus on sustainability and environmental issues, which they're spending way much more money than they actually have.
Sure.
North America, it's a very big market. Space for more than one race, that's for sure. And we've raced in Long Beach before and in New York, but I've made no secret of the fact I'd like to expand our footprint in North America. I think LA is one of the small number of venues that would do an amazing job. Sure, go for it. Become an undercard to the Acura Indycar Grand Prix of Long Beach. Knock yourself out.
That's too simple.
And you want to know why you would be an undercard? Because IndyCar is a better series.
Yep.
Dodds then addressed the idea of adding more races to the Formula E schedule. Seemed pretty set on things, though. He asserted this, quote, personally, I think the Formula One season is too long. Who cares what you think? You're in Formula E. He then added, quote, whether 16 or 17 races is the right answer for Formula E, I'm not sure, but there are also technical restrictions to us in terms of the battery. Well, that's your problem. He feels as though that there's a little bit of room, said, quote, my instinct, not a commitment or guarantee, is we continue to grow the number of races, but probably once you get to about 18 to 20, we feel like that's the maximum number of races we want to bring into a season. He doesn't have a timetable for putting that into implementation.
Okay.
Way to commit, Jeff.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, before you start talking about these things, maybe have a plan. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe have a plan.
Yeah, that might work.
All right. I'll say this. And I got to say this right up front. Going back to Formula One. Started checking out. I'm a little late on it. I intended to get to it earlier. Unfortunately, I'm about a week late in starting it. But I got through the first 5 episodes of this season 6 of Formula One Drive to Survive. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this right now and right up front. If you're looking to find out where all the drama related to the Haas F1 team comes in, it comes in episode 4. But it's not solely about Haas F1. I did find this interesting. Whereas the first couple of episodes are about a specific team. Like Aston Martin pretty much gets an entire episode to itself. Mercedes pretty much gets an entire episode to itself.
Right.
In this case, they kind of lumped Haas F1 and IndyCar or Williams together. And I get why. Because Haas F1 broke out quick, scoring a couple of points early on in the season in 2023. and Williams was left in the cellar. But as we talked about, as improvements got made over the course of the year, things suddenly flipped. Williams found some stuff, whereas Haas F1 is over there sitting there floundering. So it was kind of a neat way to do it. But this is one of those situations where, knowing what we know now, it really shed a different light on that episode.
It did.
Gunther Steiner, arguably, probably inarguably, truth be told,
Right.
the breakout star of Formula One Drive to Survive. The man has a cult following. Man wrote a book last year, was sitting there wondering if he was going to be able to sell 50,000 copies. The dude sold 50,000 copies on day one in Britain alone. And he probably autographed half of those.
Yeah.
Gunther Steiner is the breakout star. No doubt about it. Formula One Drive to Survive has made him a star, made him a household name in any household that is big into racing. The thing about it is, though, and I'm not going to give it away, I'm not giving away anything here, because over the course of the season that a Haas F1 had, frustrations had to develop.
Sure.
And who did they bubble to the surface with a guy who was as open as Gunther Steiner? So knowing now what we now know, with the Haas F1 split from Gunther Steiner and a whole new aspect, I'm now not as surprised as I was when the news came out that Gunther Steiner was let go.
Yep. Same here.
We here on this show, we were floored. We were shocked thoroughly when we realized exactly how much Gunther Steiner was involved in getting what we now call the Haas F1 team up off the ground and running. It was really Gunther Steiner's idea, and he brought Gene Haas into it as the money guy. But at the same time, as you watch that episode, and I get it, it's edited to a certain point to create a little bit of drama. But how many times did Gunther Steiner talk about the overt frustration, how he felt like he could walk away, how he felt like he might be done? How many times did we hear that coming out of his mouth, either talking to directly Gene Haas by phone, or whether he was just mentioning it and it was caught on camera?
It was a few, but, you know, it's like you said. I watched it last night before I fell asleep, and I'm like you, I'm not as surprised anymore, because he was basically putting the writing on the wall for Gene himself. Like, you don't want to be here, just go ahead. You know?
I mean, here's the thing here at CRN. We've got a general agreement amongst the three of us. And we believe that this is about to really start to see big things going on. If you missed the show last week, I'll go ahead and tell you right now. Again this week. More than likely, first week of March, we're going to start a midweek, planning on a Wednesday, podcast that you will be able to catch on CRN Live on YouTube. And we've been doing a lot of work towards getting that thing done, and we're hoping that that's going to lead to bigger and better things. But we've also come to this agreement. We all three are partners in this. But there has to be somebody who's in charge. And Matt and John agreed that it's me. Mm-hmm. We all take a vote, and if we all come up with 3 different answers to said vote, I'm the tiebreaker, for example. If John starts making news about not wanting to be here, or if Matt starts making news about not wanting to be here, and I force either one of them to stay in that role, it's going to show in their performance. And you'll hear it, or you'll see it, whether you're listening to the radio version or watching on CRN Live on YouTube. If you don't want to be here, I'm not going to force you to be here. Yep. Because you've already got one foot out the door, in my mind. If you're talking about walking, you've got one foot out the door in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to force you to stay. With as many times as Gene had to hear And as many times as Gunther stated the fact that he really was thinking about things outside of Haas F1, I'm now no longer shocked that he's gone.
Sure. That was the clear cut thing for me right there.
And you see a little bit of that in episode 5 as they start to concentrate on Mercedes, because they start talking about Lewis Hamilton's contract extension. And where is he going to be in 2025?
Ferrari.
That's right. Not at Mercedes.
Yep.
It is kind of interesting to be able to know the things that we know and then watch some of these things develop over the course of the year. Mm-hmm. Y'all have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you next week right here on the Championship Racing Network. We'll have full reviews of everything going on in Atlanta and get you prepared for next weekend's racing. See ya.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
WDNG 1450 AM.